Lisa had been awake for almost 24 hours straight, and she could feel every single minute of it weighing down on her body. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, her shoulders ached from carrying her baby girl, and her mind felt like it was wrapped in fog. This wasn't how she imagined today would go, but then again, nothing in the past 2 years had gone the way she imagined. She stood in the airport security line, bouncing 8-month-old Mia gently in her arms while trying to collapse the stroller with one hand. It wasn't working. The stroller seemed determined to stay open, and Mia was getting fussy, making those little whimpering sounds that usually meant a full meltdown was about 10 seconds away. The TSA agent gave her an impatient look, and Lisa felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she muttered, finally managing to fold the stroller. She kicked it forward with her foot while holding Mia, grabbed her diaper bag, and shuffled through the metal detector. Of course, something beeped. They had to check her bag. Mia started crying. Lisa wanted to cry too. By the time she made it to the gate, she was drenched in sweat despite the airport's air conditioning. Her flight was already boarding. She'd missed the pre-boarding announcement for families with small children. Just another thing that wasn't going her way today. The whole mess had started last night when her babysitter called at 9 o'clock to cancel. Some kind of family emergency. Lisa had actually begged the woman to reconsider. She had a job interview in New York City, the most important interview of her entire life. This wasn't just any job. This was the job that could finally pull her and Mia out of the hole they'd been living in for the past 2 years. When her husband died in that car accident, Lisa's whole world collapsed. She was 26 years old, 4 months pregnant, and suddenly completely alone. The life insurance money ran out faster than she ever thought possible. Bills kept coming. Rent kept coming. And then Mia arrived, this perfect little person who depended on her for everything. Lisa had been taking online classes, trying to finish her degree while working part-time at a coffee shop. Some nights she studied while Mia slept, surviving on coffee and pure determination. She applied for dozens of jobs, maybe hundreds. Most never responded. A few sent those polite rejection emails that all sound the same. But then this one came through. A non-profit organization that helped single mothers find stable employment. They wanted to interview her for a program coordinator position. When Lisa researched the salary, she almost cried with relief. It was enough. Not wealthy, not even comfortable, really, but enough to stop worrying about every single dollar, enough to give Mia a stable life. So when her babysitter canceled, Lisa made a desperate decision. She would take Mia with her to the interview. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't even close to ideal. But she didn't have a choice. This opportunity wouldn't come again. Now here she was, boarding a plane at 6 in the morning with an overtired baby and zero sleep. Lisa found her row and felt her heart sink a little lower. Middle seat. She'd booked last minute, so she got what was left. The window seat was already taken by an older woman who smiled sympathetically. The aisle seat was empty, but Lisa could see someone's expensive-looking briefcase on it. She hoisted the diaper bag into the overhead compartment, collapsed the stroller as small as it would go, and wedged herself into the middle seat with Mia on her lap. The woman by the window leaned over. "How old is your little one?" 8 months, Lisa said, trying to sound more cheerful than she felt. "What a sweet age. I remember when mine were that small." Lisa smiled and nodded, but inside she was calculating. The flight was 4.5 hours. If Mia slept for even 2 of those hours, they might survive this. The man who owned the briefcase arrived a few minutes later. Lisa's first impression was that he looked expensive. Everything about him screamed money and success. His suit probably cost more than her rent. His watch definitely cost more than her rent. He had that confident way of moving that people with money seem to have, like the world naturally makes space for them. He glanced at her and Mia, and Lisa saw something flicker across his face. Not quite annoyance, but maybe resignation. The look of someone who just realized their flight wasn't going to be peaceful. "Sorry," Lisa said automatically, even though she hadn't done anything wrong yet. She's usually pretty good on planes. That was a complete lie. Mia had never been on a plane before. Lisa had no idea how she'd react. The man nodded and sat down, immediately opening his laptop. He seemed determined to create an invisible wall between them. Lisa couldn't blame him. She'd probably want the same thing if she were in his shoes. For the first 30 minutes, things went okay. Mia was fascinated by the window, watching the ground fall away as they took off. Lisa had brought snacks, a bottle, toys, everything she could think of to keep a baby entertained in a tiny space. But then Mia got tired. And when Mia got tired, she got cranky. And when she got cranky, she cried. Lisa tried everything. She walked up and down the aisle, bouncing and shushing. She offered snacks that Mia threw on the floor. She sang quietly, getting stares from other passengers. Nothing worked. The man next to her hadn't said a word, but Lisa could feel his presence like a weight. She kept glancing at him, trying to gauge his irritation level. His jaw was tight. He was typing faster than before, like he was trying very hard to focus on work and ignore the screaming baby 6 inches away. "I'm really sorry," Lisa said over Mia's crying. "She's just overtired." "I'm so sorry." He finally looked up from his laptop. Lisa braced herself for anger or annoyance. But when their eyes met, she saw something different. His expression softened, and there was understanding there, maybe even kindness. "It's okay," he said. His voice was quieter than she expected. "Babies cry. It's what they do." Lisa felt tears prickling at her own eyes. She was so tired, so stressed, so overwhelmed. That small moment of kindness from a stranger almost broke her. She returned to her seat, feeling defeated. Mia's crying had dropped to a whimper, but Lisa knew it wouldn't last. She was at the end of her rope, and they still had more than 3 hours left to fly. She thought about the interview waiting for her in New York. How was she supposed to present herself as capable and professional when she couldn't even handle a plane ride? The man beside her closed his laptop. Lisa tensed, waiting for him to complain, maybe ask to switch seats. Instead, he turned slightly toward them. "May I try something?" he asked. Lisa looked at him in surprise. Sure." He pulled out his phone and opened some kind of video. Colorful fish swam across the screen, moving in slow, mesmerizing patterns. He held it where Mia could see it. The effect was immediate. Mia's crying stopped. Her little eyes went wide, locked onto those moving fish like they were the most amazing thing she'd ever seen. Lisa almost laughed in relief. "Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a niece," he said simply. "This works every time." For the first time in hours, Lisa felt some of the tension drain from her body. Mia was quiet, content watching the fish swim. The man kept holding his phone, not seeming to mind at all that he was providing entertainment for a stranger's baby. And that's when the exhaustion finally caught up with Lisa. All those sleepless nights, the stress of the past 2 years, the anxiety about the interview, it all crashed over her at once. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy. She told herself she'd just close her eyes for a minute. Just 1 minute. She was asleep before she could stop herself, completely unaware that she was slowly leaning to her right, toward the stranger in the expensive suit who had just shown her unexpected kindness. David Chen felt the weight shift against his shoulder before he fully registered what was happening. The young mother next to him had fallen asleep, and gravity had done the rest. Her head rested against his shoulder, and the baby Mia was nestled peacefully between them, still watching the fish video on his phone with droopy eyes. His first instinct was to wake her. This was his personal space, after all. He had work to do, emails to answer, a presentation to review before landing. He was the CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country. His time was valuable. People paid thousands of dollars just to get 30 minutes of his attention at conferences. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the woman's face had finally relaxed. For the past hour, he'd watched her struggle with the baby, and the stress had been written all over her face. Every time the baby cried, she'd tensed up, glancing around at the other passengers with this apologetic, almost desperate expression. Like she was waiting for someone to yell at her. Like she expected the world to be angry at her for simply existing in this space with a crying child. David knew that look. His mother had worn it for most of his childhood. He was 8 years old when his father left. Just walked out one day and never came back. His mother, barely 30 years old, suddenly had to raise 2 boys alone. She worked 3 jobs to keep them fed and housed. David remembered her coming home at night, exhausted beyond words, collapsing on their worn couch. He remembered the way she'd apologize for everything. Sorry the dinner was late. Sorry she couldn't afford new shoes. Sorry she was too tired to help with homework. Looking at this sleeping woman now, David saw echoes of his mother, the worn clothes, the overstuffed diaper bag with a broken zipper, the way she'd tried so hard to keep the baby quiet, as if her child's normal behavior was somehow an inconvenience to the world. The baby's eyes were starting to close now. David carefully adjusted his phone so Mia could still see it, even though she was clearly losing the battle with sleep. Within a few minutes, the baby was out completely, her tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. David looked down at them both. Mother and daughter, completely vulnerable, trusting a stranger without even knowing it. The woman's hand rested protectively on her baby, even in sleep. That detail struck him. Even exhausted, even unconscious, she was still a mother first. He caught the eye of the flight attendant walking down the aisle. She smiled at the scene, that knowing smile that people give when they see something sweet. David put a finger to his lips and she nodded, understanding. She moved past their row extra quietly. David tried to work one-handed, but it was nearly impossible. His laptop was at an awkward angle, and typing with one hand while trying not to disturb the sleeping woman was harder than running a board meeting. After about 20 minutes, he gave up and closed his computer. Instead, he found himself thinking about his mother. She'd passed away 3 years ago, finally able to rest after decades of struggle. By then, David had already made his fortune. He'd bought her a house, made sure she never had to work again. But he always wished he could have done it sooner. Wished he could have given her back all those years she spent exhausted and apologizing for things that weren't her fault. That's why he'd started the foundation. His company's charitable arm focused on supporting single parents, particularly single mothers, job training programs, childcare assistance, emergency financial help, the kind of support his mother never had but desperately needed. The woman next to him shifted slightly in her sleep, and David moved carefully to accommodate her. His shoulder was starting to go numb, but he didn't mind. He found himself wondering about her story. Where was she going? Was she traveling for work? Visiting family? Running away from something or running toward something? The older woman in the window seat leaned over slightly. "That's very kind of you," she whispered. David smiled but didn't say anything. What could he say? That this felt like the most important thing he'd done all week? That sitting still and letting a stranger sleep was somehow more meaningful than any deal he'd closed in the past month? About an hour into their nap, turbulence hit. Not terrible, but enough to make the plane bounce a bit. The woman stirred but didn't wake. The baby made a small sound but settled back into sleep. David found himself instinctively adjusting his position again, trying to keep them stable and comfortable. The businessman across the aisle had been watching for a while. He caught David's eye and nodded in respect. Then his eyes widened slightly and David saw recognition dawn on the man's face. Great. Someone recognized him. David put his finger to his lips again and thankfully the man understood. He gave a thumbs up and went back to his own phone, though David noticed him taking a discreet photo. That picture would probably end up somewhere on social media, but David found he didn't really care. His assistant was going to kill him. He'd missed 3 calls and probably a dozen text messages. There was a conference call he was supposed to join from the plane. He told his team he'd have the quarterly review done before landing. None of that was happening now. But David discovered something surprising. He didn't feel stressed about it. Actually, he felt more peaceful than he had in months. The constant pressure of being on all the time, of every minute needing to be productive, of always optimizing and strategizing. For the first time in forever, he was just sitting, just being, just existing in a moment without trying to extract value from it. The baby made another small sound and opened her eyes briefly. She looked up at David with that unfocused baby stare, seeming to take a moment to remember where she was. Then she reached up one tiny hand and grabbed his tie. David smiled down at her. The baby's grip tightened on the silk fabric, pulling it slightly, but then her eyes drifted closed again and her hand relaxed. David looked at his tie, now slightly wrinkled where tiny fingers had clutched it. This tie cost $600. He'd worn it to a meeting with investors just 2 days ago. Now it had baby drool on it and would probably need to be dry cleaned. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cared so little about something being ruined. The flight attendant came by again, this time with drinks. She looked at the sleeping mother and baby, then at David, and her expression turned soft with understanding. She set a bottle of water in his cup holder silently and moved on. David took the opportunity to check his phone with his free hand. 15 missed messages, his assistant asking where he was, his COO needing approval on something, a reporter wanting a comment on some industry news. The normal chaos of his daily life all waiting for his attention. He put the phone face down on his tray table. The truth was, everything in those messages could wait. The company wouldn't collapse because he took 2 hours off. The deals wouldn't fall apart. The world would keep spinning. But this moment, this quiet moment of being human for another human, felt more real than anything waiting for him in his inbox. David thought about all the fancy hotel rooms he'd slept in. $1,000-a-night suites with perfect mattresses and Egyptian cotton sheets. Somehow none of them had ever felt as meaningful as providing his shoulder as a pillow for an exhausted stranger who needed rest more than he needed personal space. His own mother used to tell him something when he was young and they were struggling. She'd say, "Money can't buy kindness, baby. That's free. And sometimes it's the only thing we have to give." At the time, David thought she was just trying to make him feel better about being poor. Now, sitting here with his expensive suit wrinkling and his productivity shot for the day, he finally understood what she meant. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing they'd begin their descent in about 30 minutes. David glanced at the sleeping woman. She was going to wake up soon and probably be mortified. He could already imagine the apologies, the embarrassment. He decided he'd try to make it easier for her somehow. He'd brush it off, make it seem like no big deal. Because it wasn't a big deal, not really. In the grand scheme of things, what was 2 hours of his time compared to the rest she clearly needed? The plane began its slow descent toward New York City. Through the window, David could see the familiar skyline starting to emerge through the clouds. Somewhere down there, his office was waiting. Meetings were waiting. Decisions were waiting. The weight of running a billion-dollar company was waiting. But for these last few minutes, David Chen was just a man with a numb shoulder, making sure a tired mother and her baby could sleep peacefully at 30,000 feet. And honestly, it was the best use of his time all week. The flight attendant's voice cut through Lisa's sleep like a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our descent into New York City. Please return your seats to their upright position and ensure your seatbelts are fastened." Lisa's eyes flew open. For a split second, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed down on her like a bucket of ice water. She was leaning against someone, not just leaning. Her head was fully resting on someone's shoulder, a stranger's shoulder. And that stranger was the well-dressed businessman who'd been sitting next to her. The one who looked like he probably had more important things to do than serve as a human pillow. Lisa jerked upright so fast, she almost gave herself whiplash. Her face went hot. That burning sensation that starts in your chest and floods all the way up to your hairline. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Mia stirred in her arms, confused by the sudden movement. The baby's face scrunched up like she might cry, but she just yawned instead, still half asleep. The man turned to look at Lisa, and she couldn't read his expression. Was he angry? Disgusted? She noticed his suit jacket was wrinkled where she'd been leaning on it. His tie was slightly crooked. This man who looked like he'd stepped out of a business magazine was now rumpled because of her. "I don't know what happened," Lisa continued, words tumbling out in a rush. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I never do that. I'm not that person who just, I'm so sorry about your jacket. If it needs to be dry cleaned, I can pay for it. I mean, I don't have much money, but I can." "It's fine," he said, and his voice was gentle. Kind, even. "You both needed the rest. Really, it was nothing." But it wasn't nothing to Lisa. She glanced around the cabin and her embarrassment somehow got worse. The older woman by the window was smiling at her, that knowing grandmother smile. The businessman across the aisle gave her a thumbs up. A few rows back, she could see a couple of people looking in their direction with amused expressions. How long had she been asleep? How long had all these people been watching her drool on a stranger? "I really am sorry," Lisa said again, trying to smooth down her hair with one hand while holding Mia with the other. She probably looked like a disaster. She felt like a disaster. "Please don't worry about it," the man said. He was putting his laptop away, straightening his own appearance. "I'm glad you got some sleep. You looked like you needed it." That comment, meant to be nice, somehow made Lisa feel even worse. She looked that bad, that obviously exhausted. She knew she did, but having someone else confirm it was mortifying. The plane continued its descent. Lisa could see New York City through the window now, the buildings getting closer. Somewhere down there was the office where she had her interview in a few hours. She needed to focus on that, not on the fact that she'd just humiliated herself in front of a plane full of people. She busied herself with getting Mia's pacifier back in, checking the diaper bag, anything to avoid making eye contact with the man next to her. But in the small space of an airplane seat, it was impossible to completely avoid him. "Are you visiting New York or coming home?" he asked. Lisa was surprised he was still willing to talk to her. "Visiting," she managed. "I have a job interview." "That's great. What kind of job?" She hesitated. This man in his expensive suit probably wouldn't understand what it was like to desperately need a job. Any job, but especially this job. It's with a non-profit. They help single mothers get back into the workforce. I'd be a program coordinator. Something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe. "That sounds like important work." "It is," Lisa said, feeling a little more confident talking about this than about her napping disaster. A lot of women get stuck after having kids, especially if they're on their own. No childcare, no flexible jobs, no support system. This organization tries to fix that. The plane touched down with a slight bump and Mia startled but didn't cry. Thank God for small miracles. Lisa felt the tension in her shoulders ease just slightly. They'd made it. Despite everything, they'd made it to New York. As the plane taxied to the gate, passengers started standing up, grabbing bags from overhead compartments. The usual chaos of deplaning. Lisa stayed seated, letting others go first. She needed a minute to collect herself and all of Mia's things. Plus, she was still trying to process what had just happened. The man stood up and pulled down his briefcase, but he didn't rush off like most of the other business travelers. He waited, and Lisa realized with a sinking feeling that he was probably waiting to get past her into the aisle. "Sorry," she said for what felt like the 100th time, trying to gather Mia and her bags and make space for him to leave. But he didn't leave. Instead, he reached up and pulled down her diaper bag from the overhead compartment. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "Let me help with that." "Thank you," Lisa said, genuinely surprised. Most people couldn't wait to get away from the woman with the baby who disrupted their flight. They moved slowly up the aisle with the crowd. Mia was getting fussy again, probably hungry. Lisa was mentally calculating how much time she had before the interview. She needed to find the bathroom, change Mia, maybe change her own shirt if she had time, feed the baby, make herself look somewhat presentable. The list felt overwhelming. At the gate, Lisa expected the man to disappear into the crowd. That's what strangers do at airports. They part ways and never see each other again. But as she struggled to unfold Mia's stroller with one hand, he appeared next to her. "Can I hold her for a second?" he offered. Lisa looked up at him, startled. Who was this guy? What businessman offers to hold a stranger's baby in an airport? But Mia was getting heavier, and the stroller was being stubborn, so Lisa made a split-second decision to trust him. She handed over her daughter, and the man took her naturally, supporting her head properly like he actually knew what he was doing with babies. "You have kids?" Lisa asked as she finally got the stroller open. "Nieces and nephews," he said. "I'm David, by the way." "Lisa," she replied, taking Mia back and strapping her into the stroller. "And this is Mia, thank you again." "For everything. The phone video, the shoulder, the bag, just everything." "You're welcome," David said. He seemed like he was about to say something else, but then he paused, looking at something on the ground. Wait, she dropped something. He bent down and picked up Mia's stuffed bunny. It was worn and ratty, missing one ear, but it was Mia's favorite thing in the world. Lisa's heart lurched. If they'd lost that, the day would have gone from bad to catastrophic. "Oh my God, thank you," Lisa said, taking the bunny and tucking it securely into the stroller. She can't sleep without that thing. "Important cargo," David said with a smile. They started walking through the terminal together, and Lisa found herself falling into conversation with him. It felt strangely natural considering they'd just met, considering she'd just slept on him for 2 hours without permission. "So this job interview," David said, "with the nonprofit that helps single mothers. You sound passionate about it." "I am," Lisa admitted, "because I am a single mother. I know exactly what these women are going through. My husband died 2 years ago, and I've been struggling ever since. This job could change everything for me and Mia." She wasn't sure why she was telling him all this. Maybe because she was tired. Maybe because he'd already seen her at her most vulnerable, so what did she have to lose? Maybe because there was something about the way he listened that made her want to talk. "I'm sorry about your husband," David said quietly. "Thank you." Lisa swallowed hard. She didn't want to cry in the middle of the airport. "It's been hard. Really hard. But I'm trying. I'm in school online, finishing my degree, working part-time, doing everything I can to build something stable for Mia. That takes a lot of strength, David said. They reached the baggage claim area. Lisa's beat-up suitcase was already going around on the carousel. David grabbed it for her before she could protest. "Which organization are you interviewing with?" he asked as he set the suitcase next to her stroller. "If you don't mind me asking." Lisa told him the name. She watched his eyebrows raise slightly. "I know that organization," he said. "My company works with them, actually." "Really? What company?" David pulled out his wallet and handed her a business card. Lisa looked at it and her stomach dropped. David Chen, Chief Executive Officer. Tech Forward Industries. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Tech Forward was one of the biggest technology companies in the world. And David Chen wasn't just some CEO, he was the CEO. The billionaire who'd built his company from nothing. The guy who was on magazine covers and gave keynote speeches at conferences. She'd been sleeping on a billionaire's shoulder. Lisa looked up at him, and her face must have shown her shock because he smiled apologetically. "I probably should have mentioned that earlier," he said. "I slept on you," Lisa said faintly. "I drooled on a billionaire." "I don't think you drooled," David said, clearly trying not to laugh. "And even if you did, it's fine. I've had worse things happen at 30,000 feet. Lisa couldn't decide if she wanted to laugh or cry or just find a hole to crawl into. This was beyond embarrassing. This was the kind of story that people would tell at parties for years. "Remember that time I fell asleep on David Chen?" "The David Chen?" But David didn't seem bothered at all. In fact, he seemed genuinely interested in talking to her. "The organization you're interviewing with," he said. "Our foundation is their largest donor. We've been working with them for about 3 years now." "Oh," Lisa said, still trying to process everything. That's really wonderful. The work they do is so important." "It is," David agreed. "My mother raised me and my brother alone. 3 jobs, constant struggle. I started the foundation because of her, to help families like mine was. And just like that, the embarrassment faded a little, because this wasn't just some rich guy who'd tolerated her presence on a flight. This was someone who understood. Someone who'd lived it. They talked for another 15 minutes in the baggage claim area, about his mother's story, about Lisa's challenges, about the nonprofit's programs and what they were trying to accomplish. David asked thoughtful questions, really listening to her answers. Finally, Lisa checked her phone and realized she needed to get going. The interview was in 2 hours and she still had to get to the office, get herself and Mia ready. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Thank you again. For everything, really." "Good luck with your interview," David said. "I mean it. I hope you get it." "Thank you," Lisa said, and she meant it too. She watched him walk away, disappearing into the crowd of travelers. Just another stranger she'd met on a plane. Except not just another stranger. Maybe something more. Maybe someone who'd remind her that kindness still existed in the world. Lisa took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and headed toward the taxi stand. She had an interview to ace. 3 weeks later, Lisa was folding laundry in her tiny apartment when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer it. Unknown number. Probably a spam call trying to sell her car insurance or tell her about her car's extended warranty. But something made her pick up anyway. "Hello? Hi, is this Lisa Martinez?" "Yes, this is she. This is Jennifer calling from Empower Mothers Initiative. We met a few weeks ago when you interviewed for the program coordinator position." Lisa's heart started pounding. She remembered Jennifer, the director of the nonprofit, a kind woman with sharp eyes who'd ask tough questions during the interview. Lisa thought it had gone well, but she'd been on so many interviews that ended in rejection that she'd learned not to hope too much. "Yes, I remember. Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling with some news about your application." Lisa sat down on her worn couch, still holding a tiny sock of Mia's. Her daughter was napping in the bedroom, finally down after a rough morning. "Okay. Unfortunately, we've decided to go with another candidate for the program coordinator role." Lisa's stomach dropped. Of course they had. The story of her life lately. She closed her eyes, trying to keep the disappointment out of her voice. "I understand. Thank you for letting me know. But please don't hang up yet," Jennifer said quickly. "I have something else to discuss with you." Lisa opened her eyes. "Okay. We're actually creating a new position. A director role for a workforce development initiative specifically focused on single mothers. It's a bigger job than the coordinator position. More responsibility, more complex work. But after meeting you and reviewing your application, we think you'd be perfect for it. Lisa wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. I'm sorry, what? Jennifer laughed. I know it's a lot to take in. This is a new program we're launching with expanded funding from our partners. We need someone who understands the challenges single mothers face. Someone with passion and insight. Someone who can build something from the ground up. Your interview really stood out to us. The way you talked about the barriers these women face, your ideas for addressing them, it was exactly what we're looking for. I don't understand, Lisa said, still trying to process. A director position? But I only applied for the coordinator job. I don't have director experience. You have something more valuable, Jennifer replied. You have lived experience. You understand this population because you are this population. And your ideas during the interview showed strategic thinking we rarely see. This isn't just about managing programs. It's about creating them. We think you can do that. Lisa felt tears starting to form. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to her. What would the position involve? Jennifer explained. The job would include developing new programs, partnering with businesses to create opportunities for single mothers, managing a team, speaking at events. It was so much bigger than anything Lisa had imagined, so much more than she thought she was qualified for. The salary, Jennifer continued, and then named a number that made Lisa's breath catch. It was more than double what the coordinator position paid, more than she'd made in her entire life. Enough to move out of this cramped apartment. Enough to stop worrying about every single bill. Enough to give Mia the kind of stable life Lisa had been desperately trying to build. I don't know what to say, Lisa whispered. Say you'll consider it, Jennifer said warmly. We'd love to have you. There's one more thing you should know. This position was specifically requested by one of our major donors. He sits on our board and he was very insistent that we consider you for this role. Something clicked in Lisa's brain. David Chen. There was a pause. You know David? We met on the plane to New York, the day of my interview. Lisa laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I fell asleep on him. Literally fell asleep on his shoulder. Jennifer laughed too. Well, that's quite a first impression. Yes, David reached out to us after meeting you. He told us about your conversation at the airport. He thought your insights and passion were exactly what this new initiative needed. But I want to be clear, Lisa. David may have brought you to our attention, but the decision to offer you this position is ours. We reviewed everything carefully. Your application, your interview, your references. You earned this. Lisa couldn't speak for a moment. She was crying now, silent tears running down her face. How many nights had she stayed up worrying? How many times had she wondered if she was failing Mia? How many job rejections had she gotten? And now this, can I think about it? Lisa asked, though she already knew her answer. Of course. Take a few days. Call me when you're ready to discuss next steps. After they hung up, Lisa sat on the couch in stunned silence. Then she got up and walked quietly to the bedroom where Mia was sleeping. Her beautiful daughter, curled up with that ratty one-eared bunny. The reason Lisa fought so hard. The reason she kept going when everything felt impossible. We're going to be okay, baby, Lisa whispered. We're actually going to be okay. 2 days later, Lisa called Jennifer back and accepted the position. The following week was a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and preparation. She gave notice at the coffee shop, though her manager was happy for her even while being sad to lose her. She started looking at apartments in better neighborhoods. She bought Mia a new outfit, something that wasn't secondhand for once. But there was something else Lisa needed to do. Something important. She found David's business card, the one he'd given her at the airport. She'd kept it in her wallet, not sure why. Now she pulled it out and stared at the phone number printed on it. Her hands shook as she dialed. David Chen's office, a professional voice answered. Hi, my name is Lisa Martinez. I was hoping to speak with Mr. Chen if he's available. He gave me his card a few weeks ago. One moment, please. Lisa was put on hold. She almost hung up. This was crazy. He was a CEO. He probably didn't even remember her. But before she could chicken out, the line clicked back on. Lisa. David's voice was warm, familiar. This is a nice surprise. Hi, David, I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. How did the interview go? Lisa took a deep breath. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to thank you. Jennifer told me you recommended me for the director position. Ah, David said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. She offered it to you then?
She did.
I accepted. I start in 2 weeks. That's wonderful. Congratulations, Lisa. You're going to be amazing at it. I don't know if I would have gotten this chance without you, Lisa said. What you did, talking to them about me, creating this position, I don't even know how to thank you properly. You don't need to thank me, David replied. I didn't create anything. The funding for that initiative was already approved. I just suggested they consider someone with real experience, someone who understood the challenges firsthand. You did the rest. Your interview, your ideas, that was all you. Still, Lisa insisted, you didn't have to do any of this. You could have just walked away at the airport. Instead, you changed my life. You changed Mia's life. There was a pause on the line. When David spoke again, his voice was softer. Can I tell you something? That flight, meeting you and Mia, it reminded me why I started this foundation in the first place. Not for tax breaks or good publicity, but because I remember what it was like to watch my mother struggle, to see her exhausted and worried and trying so hard to give us a good life. He continued. When you fell asleep on the plane, I saw my mother. All those nights she came home from her third job and just collapsed on our couch. And I thought, if I can make life even a little bit easier for someone in that position, then all of this, everything I've built, actually means something. Lisa was crying again. She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. You gave me something too, David said. You reminded me that behind every statistic, every grant we approve, every program we fund, there are real people. Real mothers trying to build real lives for their children. That matters. You matter. Thank you, Lisa managed to say through her tears. For everything. You're welcome. And Lisa, I meant what I said. You're going to be amazing at this job. Those women you'll be helping, they're lucky to have someone who truly understands them. After the call ended, Lisa sat holding her phone for a long time. She thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. Her babysitter canceling, taking Mia on the plane. Being so exhausted, she fell asleep on a stranger. That stranger turning out to be someone who could help her. People might call it luck or coincidence or fate. Lisa didn't know what to call it. All she knew was that sometimes when you're at your lowest point, when you're so tired you can barely stand, when you feel like you're failing at everything, sometimes that's exactly when life surprises you. Sometimes falling asleep on a stranger's shoulder isn't just about rest. It's about trust, about vulnerability, about being human in a world that often asks us to be perfect. And sometimes, just sometimes, that vulnerability opens doors you didn't even know existed. Lisa looked around her small apartment. In 2 weeks, she'd start a new job. In a month, she'd move to a better place. In a year, who knew where she'd be? But right now, in this moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Real, solid, tangible hope for the future. She walked to Mia's room and scooped up her sleeping daughter, holding her close. Mia stirred and snuggled against her mother's shoulder, that same trusting weight that had started this whole journey. Guess what, baby girl? Lisa whispered. Mommy got a job. A real job. We're going to be just fine. Mia yawned and went back to sleep, completely unaware that her mother's whole world had just shifted, unaware that a random act of exhaustion on an airplane had somehow become the turning point in their lives. But Lisa knew, and she would never forget it. She would never forget David's kindness, the way he let her sleep instead of waking her, the way he listened to her story at the airport, the way he saw her not as a struggling single mother taking up space but as a person with value and potential. And someday, when she was in a position to help someone else, she'd remember this moment. She'd remember how one person's kindness could change everything, because that's what this was really about. Not luck or coincidence or fate, but kindness, simple human kindness from one person to another. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most powerful force in the world. 6 months later, Lisa stood in front of a room full of people, holding a microphone and trying not to let her hands shake. This was her first big presentation as director of the Workforce Development Initiative, and the room was packed. Local business leaders, nonprofit directors, government officials, all here to learn about the program she'd built from the ground up. And sitting in the third row, taking notes like any other attendee, was David Chen. When Lisa had seen his name on the RSVP list, she'd almost called to tell him he didn't need to come. He was busy. He'd already done so much. But her assistant told her that David had specifically requested to attend. He wanted to see what they'd accomplished. Lisa took a deep breath and began her presentation. She talked about the barriers single mothers faced when trying to enter or re-enter the workforce. Lack of childcare, inflexible schedules, gaps in their resumes, the assumption that they wouldn't be reliable employees. She shared statistics, but she also shared stories. Real stories from real women who'd gone through the program. There was Monica, who'd been living in her car with her 2 kids. Now she had a job as an office manager and an apartment. There was Jennifer, who dropped out of high school when she got pregnant at 16. Now she was finishing her GED and working as a nursing assistant. There was Rachel, whose husband had left her with 3 kids and a mountain of debt. Now she was a certified electrician, making more money than she'd ever imagined possible. As Lisa spoke, she saw heads nodding around the room. She saw people leaning forward, engaged, and she saw David watching her with a proud smile on his face. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Several people approached her afterward with questions, wanting to know how they could partner with the program or replicate it in their own communities. Lisa's boss, Jennifer, pulled her aside and told her the presentation was perfect. Better than perfect. But the moment that mattered most came when David walked up to her after most of the crowd had cleared out. "That was incredible," he said. "Really, Lisa. What you've built here in 6 months, it's beyond anything we hoped for." "I had a lot of help," Lisa replied. "And a lot of funding, thanks to your foundation. Money doesn't create programs like this, people do. You did this." They walked out of the conference room together, falling into easy conversation like they always did. Over the past 6 months, David had become more than just the donor who'd changed her life. He'd become a mentor, checking in regularly, offering advice when she asked for it, celebrating her wins. And somewhere along the way, he'd also become a friend. "How's Mia doing?" David asked as they walked through the building's lobby. "She's great. Walking now, getting into everything. My apartment looks like a tornado hit it most days." Lisa laughed. "But it's a good apartment, in a good neighborhood, with enough space for her to actually play. I still can't believe it sometimes." "You earned it," David said firmly. "Every bit of it." They stepped outside into the spring sunshine. It was one of those perfect days where winter had finally loosened its grip, and everything felt possible. Lisa thought about where she'd been a year ago. Struggling, exhausted, barely holding on, and now look at her. Leading a program that was actually making a difference, making enough money to breathe. Building a life for Mia that felt stable and safe. "Can I tell you something?" Lisa said, stopping on the sidewalk. "Sometimes I think about that flight, about falling asleep on you, and I get embarrassed all over again. But then I think about everything that came after, and I realize it was the best mistake I ever made." David smiled. It wasn't a mistake. It was just a moment of being human. Of being tired and vulnerable and trusting another person without even meaning to. "You could have woken me up," Lisa pointed out. "Most people would have. Maybe," David admitted. "But my mother used to tell me something. She said that we all carry invisible burdens, and sometimes the kindest thing we can do is make someone's burden lighter, even if just for a moment. Letting you sleep, that was nothing. But if it made your burden lighter for even 2 hours, then it mattered." Lisa felt tears threatening again. She'd gotten better at accepting compliments and kindness over the past few months, but it still overwhelmed her sometimes. "Your mother sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was," David said quietly. "She worked herself to exhaustion trying to give me and my brother a better life. I think she would have liked you. You remind me of her, that same fierce determination to do whatever it takes for your kid." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. People walked past them on the busy sidewalk, everyone rushing to their next appointment, their next meeting, their next thing. But Lisa and David just stood still. 2 people who'd been brought together by chance and whose lives had become unexpectedly intertwined. "I have something for you," David said suddenly, reaching into his briefcase. He pulled out a small wrapped package. "It's for Mia." Lisa took it, curious. "You didn't have to get her anything. Just open it." She unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a stuffed bunny, brand new and perfect, with 2 intact ears and soft white fur. It looked almost exactly like Mia's beloved ratty bunny, except clean and whole. "I thought she might want a backup," David explained. "For when the original one finally falls apart. I know how important it is to her." Lisa looked at the bunny and something inside her chest cracked open. It was such a small gesture, such a simple gift, but it meant everything, because it showed that David had been paying attention that day at the airport. He'd remembered Mia's bunny. He'd cared enough to find a replacement. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is so thoughtful." "There's actually 2 more in my car," David admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. "I figured you can never have too many backup bunnies." Lisa laughed through her tears. "You bought 3 stuffed bunnies for a baby you met once?" "I bought them for the daughter of someone who matters to me," David corrected gently. "You and Mia, you're not just another grant approval or program statistic. You're people I care about. Friends." The word hung in the air between them. Friends. It seemed too small a word for what they'd become to each other, but it was also exactly right. "Friends," Lisa agreed. "Friends who met because I drooled on your very expensive suit." "You didn't drool," David insisted, laughing now too. "How many times do I have to tell you that?" "At least once more," Lisa teased. They started walking again, just wandering with no particular destination. David told her about a new initiative his foundation was planning. Lisa told him about a woman who'd just completed the program and landed a job as a software tester, something she'd never imagined she could do. "You know what the best part is?" Lisa said. "These women come into the program thinking they have nothing to offer. Society has told them they're less than because they're single mothers, that they're a burden, and then they go through this program and they realize they're actually incredibly strong. They're resourceful and determined and capable of amazing things. They just needed someone to believe in them. Like someone believed in you," David said. "Like you believed in me," Lisa corrected. "That phone call when I thanked you for recommending me, do you remember what you said?" "You said I reminded you why you started the foundation. Well, you reminded me why I keep fighting, not just for myself and Mia, but for all the other women out there who just need a chance." David stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lisa, I want you to know something. What happened on that plane meeting you, it changed me too. I'd gotten so caught up in running a company, managing investments, attending board meetings. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be a person helping another person. You gave me that back." "We helped each other then," Lisa said. "We did," David agreed. "And I hope we'll keep helping each other. Because this program you're running, it's just the beginning. We're going to expand it, replicate it in other cities, help thousands of women, and you're going to lead that expansion." Lisa's eyes widened. "What?" "We're going to talk details next week, but I wanted you to know. The board unanimously voted to make this a national initiative, which means your job just got bigger and more important." For a moment, Lisa couldn't speak. A year ago, she'd been folding clothes in a tiny apartment, barely making ends meet, wondering how she'd survive another month. Now she was being told she'd lead a national program. It was too much, too big, too impossible, except it wasn't impossible, because she was standing here, wasn't she? She'd already done the impossible. She'd survived. She'd built something meaningful. She'd turned her pain into purpose. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," Lisa admitted. "You weren't ready to be a widow at 26, David said gently. "You weren't ready to raise a baby alone. You weren't ready for any of this, but you did it anyway. That's what makes you the right person for this job." Lisa thought about all the women she'd helped over the past 6 months. All the women who'd come to her scared and uncertain, just like she'd been. And she thought about how good it felt to tell them, "You can do this. I know you can because I did it too." Maybe David was right. Maybe she was ready. Or maybe she'd never be fully ready, but she'd do it anyway, just like she'd done everything else. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it."